On the 5th of September 2014, at St Otteran's Hospital in Waterford, a nurse named Mary Grant gave Paul Cudahy his medication. What would happen shortly after would cause one family to lose their mother and for the hospital's policies to be put under a microscope. St Otteran's is a psychiatric hospital in Waterford. It opened in 1835 as the Waterford Asylum. In the 1920s, it became Waterford Mental Hospital, and then in the 1950s, it became St Otteran's Hospital. It is part of the HSE care system. So the HSE, the Health Service Executive, is basically the governing body here for the healthcare system. Maria O'Brien, who was 55, was a resident at St Otteran's Hospital. She was staying in Glendara, which was, from what I can tell, is one of the residency units on the outskirts of the hospital. So she was living with 6 other patients, one of which was Paul Cudahy. So with this unit, they had a lot less restrictions, so they could kind of come and go as they want. And then there was staff there to issue their medication and to check up on them, and then if they needed support and stuff like that. I'm not actually sure how long Maria had been staying there or the reason for her residency at the hospital. Her son Patrick Cawley would describe her as happy and bubbly, gentle and kind-hearted, but would also say that she was vulnerable. Her brother Joe O'Mahony would describe her the same way, very kind, that she wouldn't harm anyone and that she would do what she could for people. And that he said that she would greet people with like a childlike enthusiasm. Her parents split up when she was young, and as I said, she had a brother Joe, but they didn't grow up together. They were raised separately as far as I can tell. Maria herself had 3 children and was also a grandmother, and she had been separated from her partner William Holly a good while. Paul Cudahy was 36 at this time, and he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. I've searched and searched and searched, and I actually just can't seem to find a photo of him. So on September 5th, the nurse, Mary Grant, gave Paul Cudahy some antipsychotic medication at around 5 p.m. A while after this, at around 7 p.m, she got a call from Sinead Barron, another resident at Glendara, who was in her bedroom and rang to say that Paul was attacking another one of the residents. Mary and another nurse, Breda Fennelly, arrived up to the house to see what was happening, and as they got to the front door, they could hear screaming. So Mary pulled the alarm on her personal panic alarm. They went into the kitchen and saw Paul standing over Maria with a kitchen knife in his hand. And Maria was lying on the floor covered in blood. One source actually said that by the time they got there, he was standing over a second resident, Mary Nugent, with the knife in hand. Either way, the nurses, tried to calm him down, and Mary said to give her the knife, and he just turned and stared at them. The kitchen was in bits, all the furniture and all was upended. So while the nurses were trying to calm him down, disarm him, he slashed Breda's face, and he slashed Mary's fingers when she was trying to pry the knife off him. Terry Hayes, the assistant director of nursing, then arrived, and he said that Paul, who was covered in blood, lunged at him. They wrestled for a bit, and then Terry was able to manage to get outside, but Paul followed him out and was punching him, kicking him and headbutting him. It took 5 members of the Gardaí and staff to subdue Paul. After Paul was arrested, Terry, with an armed Gardaí, went back into the unit and found Maria slumped near the staircase. She had been stabbed over 100 times in her face, neck and head. She had a broken nose and defensive wounds on her hands. The deputy state pathologist, Michael Curtis, would say that the cause of death was from blood loss from her jugular vein being cut, and that blunt force trauma to the head was also a contributing factor. Paul Cudahy was charged with the murder of Maria O'Brien and also with the assault causing harm to Terry Hayes, Mary Nugent, Mary Grant and Breda Fennelly. The trial was in November 2016 and he pled not guilty by reason of insanity. The trial lasted just 3 days, and the court heard that Paul had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia many years before. He heard voices and had delusions. They heard that in March 2012, he actually attacked his own dad and said, I'm going to send you to an early grave. He blamed him for, he said that he killed his mother, that he murdered his mother, but his mother had died of cancer. It was said that Paul hadn't been taking his medication for several days. I'm not really sure if that means the medication that the nurse Mary gave him was different to the medication he was supposed to be taking, or like was it a case that he wasn't taking it and that they weren't checking to see that the patients were taking the medication. And then after this all happened, it turned out that it hadn't, it wasn't in his system, so they knew that he wasn't taking it. So there was two forensic psychologists, so there would have been one for the defence and one for the state. And Paul told them both that he had to kill Maria or else he would go to hell. He said that he felt he was freeing either his family or the world from a curse. Both doctors said that while he was aware of what he was doing, he wouldn't have been aware that it was wrong and that he wouldn't have been able to stop himself. After only 39 minutes of deliberation, the jury of 7 women and 5 men found Paul not guilty on all counts by reason of insanity. Judge Patrick McCarthy committed Paul to the Central Mental Hospital here in Dublin. Maria's son Patrick took a case against the HSE on behalf of the family. The claim was for 35,000 plus 2,400 for funeral and inquest expenses. The HSE settled, so they received the 37,400. Personally, I think the sum should have been a lot bigger. Obviously, no money is going to bring your mother or your sister back. But like when the amount was even split, each child only got 2,000. 2,000 wouldn't even cover like decent therapy here in Ireland. The HSE also apologised to the family for their failings in Maria's care. So after this incident, policies and protocols of the hospital were looked into and investigated, and there was massive failings. The Mental Health Commission inspection in 2018 highlighted overcrowding, lack of access to therapeutic services, pressure sores, and staffing issues. It showed critical and high-risk shortcomings. So when I first read about this case, like I immediately thought, where was the security? Like, why wasn't the security called? And like, even if they just have tasers or something, like for that type of environment, there should have been something there to stop an incident like that happening or going further. Like if they had been able to subdue him and disarm him quicker, they could have gotten to Maria, and like who knows, like she could have been saved. However, it turns out that the year before this happened, the hospital replaced security staff with electronic gates, saving 100,000, much to the concern of staff and nurses at the hospital. John Halligan, a local TD, demanded an investigation into the hospital's budget for security and for staff recruitment. It was shown that there had been like an increase in patients, but not any additional staff. Like the nurses in the situation were praised for the bravery of what they done to disarm him, and like they are extremely brave, but they should never have been in that position. That's not their job. They were nurses. There was a public service recruitment embargo here, which meant like all recruitment stopped after the 2008 recession. And so psychiatric nurses, like the staff numbers fell from 5,600 in 2010 to like less than 4,200 in 2014. A Wexford psychiatric hospital actually closed, and so all their patients were transferred to the Waterford one. So again, the patients were increased, but staff wasn't increased. So basically the staff at the Waterford hospital were now doing the jobs of 2 hospitals basically. Even like as late as last year, a 2019 report showed that there was like a lack of beds for the amount of patients that they had. There was patients sleeping on the floor or in like 2 chairs pulled up together to make a bed, and that there was only 57% compliance with regulations and policies. So I don't know if this is supposed to explain why, because no disrespect to anyone who is living with mental illness, but with Paul's previous history of violent attacks, even on his own family, I personally believe he shouldn't have been in such a relaxed residential unit. He should have had more supervision. He should have, it should have been made sure that he was taking his medication when there was such a repercussion of not taking it. Paul had shown no remorse, and he's made very little progress. He won't, acknowledge that he is ill or that he needs help, and he is still currently in the Central Mental Hospital. The system really did fail Maria, even Paul. Maria was a patient. She was their responsibility, and it was said that she was making a lot of progress with her own illness, and then for her life to just be taken away like that because of a system failure. And as Maria's brother Joe would say, being in care is supposed to mean being cared for, not being put in danger. It will be, well known and considered across the board that mental health services in Ireland are not good. The money is not there, and to be quite frank, the thought is not there. It's not considered enough for when our budgets come around each year, for enough investment to be put into it. As of 2020, with this video, there's no other more recent news articles out there or anything that I can find talking about improvements in the hospital or anything like that. And then obviously now with COVID, there's, everything else is on the back burner, especially mental health services. So hopefully when COVID is not the main issue anymore, Ireland, the government will look at the pressing matter of the mental health services here in Ireland. So this was just a short video today, but when I came across the story, I just thought it was one that should be talked about. So thank you for watching and for listening, and hopefully see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.